Welcome back, everyone, to the Institute of Urban Ecology. I'm Naomi. Here at IUE, one of our main goals is to raise awareness about the nature we share our urban ecosystems with. In our previous videos, we've talked a lot about various plants and animals that often get overlooked here. But in today's video, I want to talk about another overlooked aspect of our urban ecosystem, the Indigenous peoples. In our modern world, it's all too easy to forget that tens of thousands of years ago, people lived here off the land without any of the modern conveniences of urbanization. Tens of thousands of years ago. That's a lot of knowledge and experience to be passed down. And so in today's video, I would like to acknowledge the Coquitlam First Nation, Clayoquat, as well as all Coast Salish peoples whose traditional and unceded territories we call our urban ecosystems. So let's get started. When new innovations were implemented on this land we call Canada, it was done so without the consultation of the communities of people who grew up on this land. Those communities are the Indigenous peoples, and Indigenous translates to native to the area. Ancient Indigenous communities cared deeply for the world they lived in and studied the surroundings and their ecosystems for tens of thousands of years. That knowledge was passed down from generation to generation, not in a textbook or a video like this, but through conversations and stories and first-hand experience. European settlers have only lived here for about a few hundred years. We only need about 10,000 more to gain the same amount of experience. Nobody understands this ecosystem more than the Indigenous peoples. What we call conservation today, the Indigenous peoples called tradition then. In other words, they lived sustainably and with the environment instead of against it. You might find yourself thinking, well, that was thousands of years ago. So much has changed now due to technology and urban development that the ecosystem has changed too. Is it even possible to live sustainably in a city? The answer is yes. The fact is the ecosystem hasn't changed, and we can't make it change because we are a part of it and not its ruler. Instead of trying to change the ecosystem, we need to learn from the example of the Indigenous communities and change the way we live, not how the world lives around us. It's all too easy to think of nature as a nuisance too. Ever stop to wonder about why large trees near houses are cut down, or had to clean up your garbage after a raccoon or a bear has gone through it, or the insect pests that eat and destroy your garden? I've been there too, but remember, we are living in their ecosystem. Ever stop to think that you might be a nuisance to a family of raccoons? When we built our cities, we weren't thinking about the long-term effects it would have on the nature in the area. Thankfully, the Indigenous peoples always have, and they've always advocated for the nature in our cities by using various traditional practices that were handed down to them by listening to stories from their ancestors. People from the Coquitlam First Nation had access to the rivers that were filled with salmon. Stephen Armstrong, a member of the Coquitlam First Nation, remembers how his grandmother would tell him stories about how there was so much salmon in the river that it looked like you could walk across the backs of the salmon when you stepped into the river. Coquitlam translates to red fish up the river, which was a very fitting name at the time. Now, because of urbanization, sockeye salmon have not spawned here in the Coquitlam River for many, many years. As mentioned in our urban salmon stream video, this relationship with salmon embodies one of the many ways to live sustainably. The Clayoquat Biosphere Reserve on Vancouver Island is a great example of how modern communities can use traditional Indigenous knowledge to build sustainable ecosystems and sustainable economies. A biosphere reserve is a living laboratory that allows us to test and understand how managing water, land, and biodiversity can be done sustainably. For example, the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations people of the area use traditional First Nation practices to help preserve the waterways and forests of the area, while also providing the people who live there with jobs and an income to survive on. So you've got a glimpse into some of the collaborations that are going on, but how can you get involved? Well, there are lots of opportunities in the Metro Vancouver area to learn from and interact with various Indigenous communities. You just need to know where to look. Post-secondary institutions like Douglas College have Indigenous centers where both Indigenous and non-Indigenous students can gather and find resources like books and movies and even attend special events. For example, we had the privilege of being part of the tobacco and sweetgrass harvest at the Douglas College Coquitlam campus with Sandra Green, an elder from the Haida First Nation, and Lillian Howard, an elder from the Mowitchit-Muchelit First Nation. By being a part of this event, we got to talk to them, ask them questions, and learn more about their traditional practices. There are many other non-profit organizations that are also offering opportunities for people to interact and learn from various Indigenous communities. The Renfrew Collingwood Food Justice non-profit organization focuses on integrating traditional ecological knowledge from Indigenous communities in their Norquay Community Food Forest. You can be a part of that community too. The Red Fox Healthy Living Society has a free seed generation program that youth can participate in to learn more Indigenous traditions and from the elders in the community. Visiting various Indigenous community social media sites as well on Facebook and Instagram will also provide you with a lot of resources and places to learn. Former restoration ecologist Robin Wall-Kemmerer, a member of the Potawatomi Nation, says, "It's not the land which is broken, but our relationship to the land." How do you maintain your relationship to the land? We highly encourage you to check out some of the resources that we'll include down below and let us know of any other suggestions you have. Here at IUE, we're no experts in Indigenous traditions and knowledge, but we do recognize and acknowledge the fact that there's a lot that we can learn about our urban ecosystems from Indigenous traditions. Just because their knowledge wasn't written down in a textbook or a paper like modern day science is, doesn't mean that we can ignore what they have to say. We look forward to learning more and working more with the Indigenous communities that we share our urban ecosystem with. And in doing so, we believe that we can create a more sustainable world that we live in. Until next time, everyone, I want to thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.